Hello, everyone. Thanks for dropping in. There's still a lot of people joining. Zoom is a bit slow, so we're going to wait about 50 more seconds before we start. And yeah, we got a lot of people joining right now. Just a few more seconds. Wow, that's a big group here. Once again, thanks everyone for joining. We're going to wait about half a minute before we start so that everyone has a chance to join. This will be recorded and available on YouTube. So no worries if you have to leave early or if your colleagues or friends didn't have time to join. All right, now we're going to start. My name is Marcus from Hostaway. It's an honor to host a fantastic group of people here today. We're Hostaway, Operto, Autohost, and NoiseAware all represented here. And one thing that us four have in common is that we cater to both small, mid-size, and large property managers. And we wanted to put together a webinar because we get a lot of questions from our customers on how to scale. And that can look very different. It can be someone with a few properties who want to get to 20, but someone with 50 properties might want to get to 200. And even those with 500 properties, they run into different scaling issues. And we each have a unique angle at how we tackle this, depending on what our technology does. But the interesting part is that there's good ways for property managers to scale, and there's bad ways. It's that simple. And of course, the right solution isn't the right one for everyone, but there are some best practices that we've noticed, and we wanted to share them with all of you. So let's start with a short introduction here. We got Steve, CEO of Operto. Maybe you can share a bit what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So Operto, based in Vancouver, up in sunny Canada. We do property automation for short-term and vacation rental and even hotel markets. So we take care of everything from pre-stay, in-stay, and post-stay with regards to actual hardware technology inside of the property. So we help companies and obviously managers to scale their property portfolio through automation.
All right, and then Ela from Autohost, welcome.
Thank you. So yeah, for those that don't know, my name is Ela Mezhiborsky. I'm the co-founder and CPO here at Autohost. And Autohost is an identity verification and fraud detection platform. So we take care of the guest screening side of things, mostly for hospitality. And so we're working with professional operators to mitigate the risk and automate the process. So scale is a big consideration, where we move operators from kind of gut feeling to keep you safe to scaling at bulk and managing to screen multiple guests and have them go through the process so you can focus on the growth side of things.
Thank you. And Kevin, pleasure to have you here from NoiseAware.
Everybody, I'm Kevin. I'm the CEO of NoiseAware. We're the vacation rental industry, short-term rental industry's pioneering privacy-safe noise and occupancy monitoring solution. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is I think it's critical that we all sort of think about the traveler experience and delivering a great traveler experience. However, at NoiseAware, I think we do this, subject to protecting the vacation rental owner and you, the property managers, your assets, promoting responsible traveler behaviors, and then ultimately, we do a lot of advocacy work for fair and balanced short-term regulation.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll also give a brief introduction. Once again, I'm Marcus from Hostaway. We're PMS and channel manager for vacation rentals and short-term rental property managers. We got a marketplace with over 100 integrated software partners. We're a preferred partner of Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, Expedia, Marriott, Google Travel, and yeah, 100 other companies as well. And we pretty much tie everything together so that property managers can focus on delivering that great guest experience. Now about this this webinar, it will be great if you put if you want to put any introductions in the chat. Everyone who's listening in, you could type where you're from and what you're doing, maybe how many properties you have. If you feel like it, you don't have to. But if you have any questions, we'd like to keep this interactive. So please use the QA section. Hello, Barb from Vegas. I'm going to be there in October for VRMA. I think we all are. So hopefully we can join you and meet you there. Once again, put your questions in the QA section. We'll get to them after the webinar. Now let's get straight through it. So this is about how to scale your business and how to use tools to deliver a better guest experience. So we're going to go through, in very practical terms, give you advice on what you can do to run your business more efficiently. And especially considering that labor shortages are a big factor in both our industry, but many other industries. There's a lot that can be automated and at the same time provide a better experience for the guests. So we're going to go through 6 stages of every booking. It's marketing, conversion, pre-check-in, check-in, during the stay, and after the stay. So let's start with marketing here. So I'll leave the floor open and I'll add my own thoughts afterwards. But what have you seen the successful property managers do when it comes to marketing their properties that makes their business more effective?
I can kick off. So I think there's lots of elements of marketing that actually, Marcus, you'll be best to answer in terms of more the promotion of the property. But given that we're kind of also focusing on the guest screening side, but not in a way of how to deter guests, but on the contrary, to get more clients, I think that when you market your property, a really important part is to just be upfront about your requirements. And a big misconception that we often see, especially with smaller operators looking to grow, is the fear that being upfront and potentially even very adamant about requirements could cause friction. Whereas what we're seeing in practice, especially with large brands that do it well, is that being very upfront and professional is impressive and shows the integrity of the brand. So if anything, guests are used to filling out forms and going through process when they're booking airlines. And just there's an element of establishing a really good standard of operation, and guests know that they're in good hands. So from the marketing side, I would say just being really upfront on what's required and what you provide and what you expect.
Thank you, Ela. That's really what we're seeing as well. Setting the right expectations for the guests. A lot of starting property managers are, as you said, a bit scared of trying to filter out anyone. I'll give an example. I'm actually on vacation right now, staying at a cottage on a lake, and the description very clearly said, this is not suitable for people who are younger than 12 years old. Now, we still took our kids with us, 2 4-year-olds, and it's perfectly safe for them. But I think
we
this
won't
sets
tell
the
anyone.
No, I mean, they know it's a property manager. They might even be on this webinar. Send us a message if you're here. But the point is that we have the expectations. This is not going to be child friendly. It's not going to be child proof, and we won't have any complaints. You know, there's actually games for the kids here. But the point is, they marketed it in a way so that the average guest, let's say they have, this cottage might have 20, 30 guests over the season. Most of them are not going to have any problems. Whereas if you had said, this is the perfect place for everyone, some of them might be disappointed, especially if they bring their kids. And I think that's very important. That these are things that you can market in the description, even in the title. Something that a lot of properties don't do when they try to cater to everyone is they don't write a specific use case. But if you use the term luxury or romantic or getaway or by the beach, that's a specific use case. And it sets the tone for the entire stay. Someone who is just planning their vacation or planning their trip, if they want to do something on the beach, if you have the words on the beach in the title, it does set the right expectations. And that's the beginning of the journey here. Kevin and Steve, do you have anything to add here?
I think that, you know, what I've seen is you've got a different sort of consumer, the now versus sort of pre-pandemic. And you've got a lot of really digitally native travelers now that sort of expect that, you know, that they don't have to meet the host, you know, at a random restaurant down the street to pass them the keys or to, you know, pick it up from the laundromat or to, you know, other sort of friction points, which are traditionally found in vacation rentals. And so what we've seen is that many more listings have, we are a tech-enabled stay. We are, there's a certain level of technology which we have put into our property to ensure that the guest has a really seamless stay, the sort of stay that they would expect to have at say maybe more of a hotel experience, where kind of what you're getting before you arrive. And so that's what we've seen is just sort of a bit of a shift in terms of calling out technology as an important piece for the consumer.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have anything to add on
Yeah.
how to market the properties?
I mean, in all honesty, the and this is probably more from my time at Verbo when I was the head of partner success, but I'd say, the things that travelers ultimately want are, generally in a particular location, right? They need the home that's going to be perfect for them. And it's, it comes down to, the price, the configuration of the home, some of the amenities that are offered in the home. Cancellation policies are pretty important. And so more flexible cancellation policies are things that travelers are demanding more now than they used to. Ultimately, I think, the other two mentioned it and said it well. I think it's really about sort of setting the right expectations for the traveler. And so being, open, honest, 100% accurate in the listing, while also hitting on the traveler demands that I think are very different today than they were, say 2 or 3 years ago. And so we have a lot of new travelers into this space, and many folks actually don't know what a vacation rental is or what to expect. And so Marcus, you expected that it wouldn't be child friendly, but some folks, if you haven't read it in the listing, and so it's great that it was sort of perfectly open, honest, accurate in the listing. But if it's not there, people expect that the home is going to be like a hotel, right? It's gonna be perfect for them, perfect for their kids, perfectly safe. It's going to have sheets and linens. It's going to, they have expectations of our industry because they haven't participated in it before, that it's just different. And so I think the travelers today are different than they used to be, and being sort of open and honest and setting expectations is critical.
I really like that. That's an incredibly valid point, because what you're risking here, if you let someone stay and they have wrong expectations, they don't know about towels or sheets or monitoring or the check-in process, the risk you're having is that they will be unhappy guests, and that may not maybe affect the business too much. I mean, an unhappy guest usually pays the same as a happy guest. Maybe an unhappy guest doesn't even leave a review, so it doesn't affect you much. But what it will affect, though, is you will spend time and energy. You and your staff will spend time and energy on making that guest happy. And that's what you want to avoid. And that's what you can avoid in a very cheap way, by setting the right expectations to prevent any negative feedback from hitting your staff. Because let's be honest here, your staff as a property manager is the most valuable asset you have right now. All right, let's move to the next one, the conversion. This is especially relevant for those of you who market your properties on OTAs, such as Airbnb, Verbo, Booking.com, or if you have your own website. There's basically 2 events you want to track. One is how many people see the property, and then how many people book. Now, on, let's say, Airbnb or Verbo, these metrics are tracked by the platforms themselves. But it's important for you to get people to look at the property, but also to get them to convert. And a part of that is the terms you put in there in the conversion. And I can maybe start off on this topic. I think Kevin touched on it earlier here, the cancellation policy. That's something that can really affect conversion. Someone who's looking at their dream property, they found it, and they think about the circumstances that they already know or might happen for their trip. The cancellation policy can be the difference between getting a booking and not. Another one that comes to mind here is extra fees. A lot of people want to see the breakdown of the price, and typically in order for property managers to make a lot of money, you want to have the fees, let's say, differentiated and put aside for easier accounting. and more profitability. But on the other hand, a lot of travelers would like to see an all-in-one cost. So those are at least two things that come to mind on our end. How you can increase conversion is by, for example, setting up these settings on different properties and see which ones convert more. But I'll leave the table open for other opinions on how to increase conversion.
So Steve mentioned that the travel nowadays is actually a little bit different because of the pandemic, because of just times changing. So I think that even as we're talking technology, if you were to mention that to the client, so it kind of goes along with setting expectations, but if you're very upfront about how automated things are and how simple the check-in flow and how everything is available in the unit and how, tech forward we are, I think that in terms of finding the right audience for your properties, that might also hit the right spot with travelers looking for that simplicity, because the hands-off approach is something that could be very valid right now. You don't want to meet somebody behind the corner under the tree or, look for a key. And so being very upfront on how simple this is might help you compete a little bit more over just, pretty photos are the bare minimum. And having, if you're at a beachfront, you're competing with other beachfronts. So maybe the edge you can add, especially as a small operator, is not to underestimate the fact that you're using like everything you can to improve the guest experience. And that could also be upfront on your listing as people search for certain factors.
Yeah, I'd say from my side, again, I think it comes down to being sort of open, honest, and setting the right expectations. At the same time, I think that there's a big piece of sort of responsiveness, and so in some of these platforms, right, it actually allows you to ask a question of the host or the property manager, and ultimately being responsive to what the guest is asking for or what the traveler is asking for is pretty critical, because people are asking questions, they want to get that response, and then they ultimately want to book kind of minutes after that. And here's the deal. I think in general, right, if you are getting a question about a property and you get it frequently, well, then that's information that you should put in your listing. And so if very frequently people are asking you, what's your bed bath configuration, and you haven't sort of, set it up, well, then obviously put that in the listing. And if, they ask you about the bed configuration specifically around, well, is it king bed or is it a queen bed or is it two twins or a double, put that information in the listing. And so almost all of these platforms, right, they make it pretty simple if you have the right connectivity partner. And so we're talking about scale. I would argue one of the most important decisions that a property manager is going to make is who their connectivity partner is and which platforms those connectivity partners sort of expedite and make great. But I think these connectivity partners and the platforms, they make it pretty simple for you to understand what are the most commonly asked questions from travelers. Answer those questions in your listings, and you won't get as many questions. But when you do get questions, be ultra responsive, and I think that's a pretty good way to convert.
I think one of the trends that we're seeing now, and this is across all hospitality verticals, is the importance of guest communication, and really ensuring that from the moment that they're even searching to stay with you all the way through, they might have booked and now it's sort of pre-stay, but it's not for another 3 weeks or a month or whatever until they arrive, is how do you build that trust with the guest that that you're the property owner, they're asking you questions, you're answering those questions in a timely manner, and what you're essentially doing is you're creating stickiness with that reservation, right? So that if on the off chance they have booked maybe multiple properties and they haven't quite decided which one they're going to pick, that you actually are the one that at the end of the day are the one that is being the most responsive. You've got your everything, all your ducks in a row, and that you've built that sort of trust with them so that they're not going to drop your cancellation, or they're not going to cancel on you. For us, what we've seen, we've actually sort of taken our business a bit further, and we've actually created a guest application which allows us to have that direct communication with the guest early on. And what we're finding, or our users are finding, is that the cancellation rates are dropping off quite significantly because you're building that bridge with the customer, and that can be hours, weeks, days in advance. And I think that's really, really important.
Amazing. So that brings us to the pre-check-in and a check-in stage. Now, this is after, you know, you get the most adrenaline when you actually made the booking, but then there's a period in between before you check in when you're not necessarily thinking about it until you start checking into your flight or starting to pack the bags. What are the things that should be communicated here before arrival, and what is the ideal check-in process? What do you see are the major contributors to efficiencies in the industry?
Yeah, I think, you know, just to continue on a little bit, it's important to answer, as Kevin was talking about, like sort of those frequently asked questions, like make sure that you're leaving no doubt in terms of what to expect and what are the sort of things that everyone's asking for, to make sure that, you know, that information is communicated clearly. And then obviously when you're talking about sort of pre-arrival or pre-check-in, then you're, you know, as the property owner and the asset manager, you're deciding, okay, what kind of background checks do I want to do on the guest, if any? And you know, do I have a problem with partying before in my units? You know, what level of surety do I need that the guest is who that they say that they are? And so those kind of pieces are very important from the asset owner side. And then from the other side, you're obviously trying to create like almost like a digital guest book for the client, so they know exactly what to expect when they walk in the door for the first time, and they almost feel like they're at home before they've even arrived.
Hey, so I mean, free check-in from our perspective that's kind of where we live. So it's a really crucial part as far as I'm concerned. And I think that when we're talking about guest screening for the sake of attracting the right guests, then yeah, it's not just guest screening to avoid fraud on the one extreme of it. It could also be guest screening, like Marcus, the example you gave, that if you're getting the wrong guest into the property, they were hoping to have a lovely gathering, but it's not the right place for it, or they were hoping for a romantic getaway and it's actually not the right place for that. I think that we're going kind of consistent with it being upfront about your expectations. The one part I do want to make sure we don't neglect is really the trust and safety side of things. Pre-check-in is where you can walk that fine line between the guest experience you're providing and making sure that your property remains safe, and therefore attracting the right guests could also mean the ones with the right intentions, the ones that are suitable for the space, the ones that will not abuse the space, the accommodations, the amenities provided. And so as far as we're concerned, that guest vetting process that you would do pre-check-in is pretty much your first line of defense. It's your opportunity to clarify expectations in the event of gray area bad guests. If you're just really clear about, we don't allow gatherings and we will dismantle it, and you can stay on, or we're monitoring certain things about your stay, and you make sure that your staff is on top of things, you might get the guest to just go ahead and say, you know what, that's not the right place for me, let's go ahead and cancel. So that the honest deterrence is a really big consideration. You're going to make sure that whoever is not suitable will choose not to stay in this place, keeping your business focused on the guests that are suitable for that. They're going to become the repeat guests. They're going to be the ones that love your service rather than trying to get under the radar and sneak in with the wrong intentions. So the pre-check-in stage really is crucial. And so doing the vetting, asking the questions, collecting their info, making sure that they are aware of your rules and you are aware of who's staying is a really important part to kind of avoid later stage incidents and issues.
Yeah, I'll actually, that's a great point, and I'll ultimately sort of touch on that when we get into sort of like in stay and kind of after stay, and the importance of, you know, during this pre-check-in period, I think reiterating your house rules and sort of what is and isn't appropriate in, you know, in the home, outside of the home, in the community, that sort of thing is critically important. Marcus, it's interesting. You mentioned that, you know, you have the adrenaline of making the booking, and I would argue that you know, the industry is getting better, but immediately upon booking, I actually find that at least in my experience, like the next feeling is actually fear. I'm like fearful of, like, I just put my credit card down. I just sent, you know, $2,000 over the transom. And maybe I trust Airbnb, I trust Vrbo, I trust Booking.com that they're going to guard this money. But then I'm like, is my booking real? Did it happen? Right? And I generally, it's why that communication piece is so important. Like literally right after somebody makes a booking, I think so many people just want to know that it's real. And so I think that sort of first communication is critically important. And I find that in the industry, there's a common mistake of the first communication that many sort of property managers and some owners send to the new guest is, thanks for booking. Here is this bulky process that you now need to go through. Can you please fill out this additional contract, sign these pieces of paper, PDF it, and send it back to me? How about you take a picture of your credit, the front of your credit card and the front of your driver's license, and send it to me? And it's like, oh my God, when that happens, I become incredibly fearful about what it is that I just did. I just gave all this money away, and now I've got a third party who's reaching out to me and asking me for all this additional information. Which is why, again, it's sort of critical to set those expectations. If you are going to do that, it's critical to set the expectations up front. That here's what to expect when we go through the booking process. Every booking is going to require XYZ sort of the post sort of payment. But I can't tell you how many times I'm just shocked to get an email from a random third party, and it's not random. It'll be the property manager or the owner, and they'll say, "Please take a picture of your driver's license and email it to me." It's like, no way, right? That is not a process that I trust. You wouldn't do that anywhere else on the internet. And so, why do we think it's safe to do it here? And so I think using sort of automated tools like Autohost and others, to me, you have to have that in your process. Otherwise, it's not going to be trusted by travelers for very long.
I think, especially, those are awesome points. I think especially when you're talking about a guest who maybe hasn't stayed a lot of times in a vacation rental, short-term rental, and they have the expectation of hotel, which is it's trusted. There's the front desk. I've been staying there for years. I know what to expect. You kind of have there's a level there of trust. Whereas when you're booking in this space for the first time, there's definitely a trust gap of as you said, I just sent this person $2,000. I don't even know if the property is real. Who's the human on the other side of this property? Do the pictures actually, match the unit, et cetera, et cetera? And there is a huge challenge there. So I think, again, when you're talking about pre-stay, you have to be very open and honest and transparent. But I think the sooner you can start communication with your guest, where they feel oh, there's an actual human on the other end of this transaction who's going to take care of me, my family. They understand the type of stay I'm looking for, et cetera. You're going to put yourself in a very, very good position to not only get a 5-star rating and have a repeat booking and hopefully a direct booking the next time, but also a super happy guest who's going to word of mouth and all the rest of it. So I think pre-stay is absolutely critical to setting expectations and setting yourself, on a journey for success.
Yeah, I think remember. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
No, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, remember that, there's the weekend traveler and sort of the 1 and 2 night stays that are, I'd say less frequent in the vacation rental world, but they still happen in vacation rentals and in short-term rentals. But more often than not, the things that the experiences that you guys are delivering as property managers and owners, it's literally the most important experience for these people, for these travelers of their entire year, or maybe their entire 2 years or 3, or maybe they've been saving up for 5 years for this. And so it's critically important that it goes correct. And I'll just give you an example, right? When I'm booking a home and I'm booking it for myself and my wife and my 2 kids, and then my mom and my dad are going to come along, and then my sister and brother and their kids are going to come along. Guess what happens if I screw that up, right? I will never hear the end of it from my mom in particular. And so it's please help me to not have to hear from my mom about how I screwed up the family vacation. And it's kind of I don't know. I think we take it for granted, how big the responsibility is.
Yep.
of this use case that we're playing a part in.
Yeah, well, there's a very simple trick that property managers can do, and this is data from the big OTAs. They show this, that if you have an individual owner who owns 1 or 2 properties, the overall guest experience is going to be better than if the same property is managed by a large property manager. Now, I can tell you exactly why that is, and it's really related to what you just said there, Kevin. People might have been saving up for years, and it's not enough that they're happy. I actually had a guest of one of my properties who had his mother-in-law who was unhappy, and that was his biggest problem. He loved the place, but his mother-in-law didn't, which was terrible. But what you can do is when the guest has that adrenaline and makes the booking, you as a property manager, you should already know why did they book it. And you may say, well, it's different for everyone, but no, it's actually not different for everyone. If you got a property in Florida, there's a certain type of people that go there. If you got a property in the Muskoka Lakes, there's a certain type of people that go there for a certain type of reason. And probably 80% of your guests are booking that place for very similar reasons. The best thing you can do to make them feel secure is you can reinforce whatever it is that they booked it. If they wanted to book a romantic getaway, and 80% of your guests book a romantic getaway, just send them a message, set up an auto message that says, thank you, we're so happy that you booked this. This is going to be the best romantic getaway of your life. Well, that's setting pretty high expectations. But if you don't know why your guests are booking your properties, and I can understand that, because if you have 50 properties, you may not have even stayed at all of them. You should find out, because if you can reinforce that message through the entire booking journey, miracles will happen. People will get happier. It's that simple. Now, I've been in this industry 7 years, and one of the most fascinating discussions I always have is, I think it was Ela and Steve mentioned here, house rules. Because it seems like there's a problem with the house rules in terms of communication. The more rules you have, the less people read. But then if you don't give any rules, people don't use common sense either. And the answer to this problem is surprisingly simple. Just like 80% of the people booking any specific property are going to be fairly similar to the other 80%. You can actually dissect the people who book on your own website. You can dissect them even on, let's take a simple example, on Airbnb. There's two types of travelers on Airbnb. And it's really black and white. There's those that have traveled with Airbnb before and those that have not. And you see it very simple. If they have 20 reviews as a traveler, you know that they've used Airbnb before. If they don't have 20 reviews, or if they have 0 reviews, you know that they probably haven't used Airbnb before. Don't give the same experience to everyone. And if they book through your own website, if they book through different channels, or even in different languages from different locations, many locations, you will see that the people who come there from a different country are slightly different than people who come from another country. You can use that to your advantage and just give them the right piece of information. I'll give a very practical example. Once I was checking into a place in Barcelona where I've been probably 10 times in my life. And one of the items there was about the drinking water. And I thought, that's completely ridiculous. I want to know the Wi-Fi password. That's all I want to know. I already know how drinking water in Barcelona works. And if this person had checked my profile, they see that the last 3 reviews I had as an Airbnb guest was in Barcelona. So probably I know how drinking water works. But they were just sending the same message to everyone. Yeah, I just find this discussion fascinating, because for 7 years, I still see property managers wondering, why don't people read house rules? Well, that's why. You're putting in 11 rules, but to any single traveler, only 2 of them are relevant. All right, let's go to the next stage. This is where we get some real expertise here. What about during the stay? Once the guest checks in, it might even be too late to send them house rules, because if it's a, let's call it a boring stay, they might have work to do, then they're going to do that. Or if it's a really fun stay, maybe you have a pool, maybe you have a beach, mountains, they're going to go to the beach. They're not going to sit around reading house rules. So here's a question for the panel. What can you do during the stay to ensure the guests have a good time and still scale your business efficiently? maybe Kevin
Yeah.
here has some opinions since your technology mostly caters to during the stay.
Yeah, I feel like we skipped over Steve's part of the stay, which is the check-in and getting into the home. But maybe we'll double back on that, or he can comment on it when he speaks. But I'd say in relation to NoiseAware, to me, like, yes, this is the part of the stay that we're sort of critical in, and I think it's never a great traveler experience for any party involved, right? Either the traveler, the homeowner, the property manager, the folks in the community, et cetera, if somebody's breaking the house rules. And so maybe they read them, maybe they didn't. If this thing results in a complaint, if somebody's being sort of loud, disorderly, they've got 35 people over and the unit really only handles 4, it's going to result likely in a complaint from a neighbor. Maybe it's going to result in a complaint, from the owner or the property manager if they live nearby. And worst case scenario is that the police show up at the door. And so what our technology does is it really focuses on de-escalating the noise and occupancy issues before they actually become an issue. And so from a scalability standpoint, if we sort of sense that something is getting a bit too noisy, or maybe we sense that sort of occupancy is becoming elevated, we'll essentially send a reminder to the traveler, and then we'll send if things haven't calmed down, we'll send another reminder of house rules to the traveler, and then eventually to the owner and the property manager. And so the whole goal of our technology is really to de-escalate the issue before it becomes an issue. And our hope is that you actually never even, as a property manager or owner, you never even think about our technology, because it's done the work for you of having to quiet somebody down or having to get somebody to sort of move their party to another location.
Yeah, I think for us, we issue the digital key, right? So we're in a fortuitous place, because without Operto, and if you haven't read the house rules and you haven't done the pre-screening, pre-arrival stuff, you just won't get the digital key to get in the front door, right? So at the end of the day, we can ensure that there is a level of acknowledgement around things to do, places to go, where to find things, how to remove some of those common friction points, and we put them right into our guest application. And then what we'll do is we actually can pull in noise alerts from NoiseAware. We can pull in occupancy alerts. We can work with other parties, and we can actually bring that digital. It's essentially a digital guest book, but what it becomes is an actual tool to communicate with your guests, so that that they're not searching around looking for stuff they don't even know what to do in that town, or places to go, or things to do. You can, because everything is obviously off the key, right? So we know that they'll use that tool because they almost have to. And so it's a really nice way of ensuring that that you have that good guest communication, that if there's anything wrong on the property, that they can alert you right away, that there's those open lines of communication, and that you are, at the end of the day, as the asset owner, you are protecting your property, because you do have a NoiseAware sensor in the wall. And so as it's elevated, if there's an elevated situation, we can actually alert right away and say, hey guys, 10 o'clock's the quiet hour, let's tamper down here. And you can start to have that again, those checks and balances in place. So it's, again, these are I don't think that they're intrusive things for the guests, but they're very, very helpful ways of making sure that the guest has a good stay, but also that you're protecting your asset. And Kevin, I don't know what the percentage is, but isn't 90% or something like that of all noise complaints actually diminished after one warning, or something like that? It was quite significant.
Yeah, it's great. It's the overwhelming majority. It's sort of greater than 70% in some studies, and greater
Amazing.
than 80%.
Yeah,
I think it's important you mentioned sort of non-intrusive. I think to me, if there's sort of an escalated situation that has the potential to become escalated, it's kind of like the gentle reminders of, hey, by the way, reminder that the house rule is less noise after 10 p.m. or something like that in the community. And then in general, people sort of quiet down and go about their stay, and they have a great time. so again, I think it's sort of like those gentle reminders are key. And there's another piece to this, which is sort of privacy protection. And so there's some companies out there that, you know, that they're maybe listening or watching because they want to be able to hear or see in order to, you know, then be able to advertise, you know, other things to the travelers that they might want. And I feel like, you know, for at least for the companies that are here, and for NoiseAware in particular, sort of privacy is king. And, you know, ultimately we're listening just to the environment and not to any individual and ascribing any sort of data to an individual. And I think it's critical that the short-term rental industry just remember that people generally want to be on vacation with their friends, their family, their loved ones, and they don't want to feel like they're being watched and listened to and, you know, forever monitored. So
maybe, I know, like, so Marcus, before I move into like after the stay, I think the elements that we discussed so far, there's a big kind of underlying factor that is true for each of those stages that we're all very passionate about, and does answer the question of how the best companies scale. And it's really that balance between automation and personal touch. And I think that in every one of those stages, we've pointed out the importance of being upfront and clarifying rules and communicating fast, and a smooth check-in or a clean and respectable and professional screening process, and then even mid-stay alerts that are quick enough. I think that recognizing when technology can help make processes efficient is something that larger brands have figured out. And the other advantage in automation, so we often talk about efficiency, and efficiency is doing things fast, but effectiveness is doing things right. And so avoiding human error as you scale, like if you manage 2 properties, you can be the loveliest host on earth, but how do you go from 2 to 20 to 200? I think that's exactly where finding a PMS that addresses your needs and making sure that your guests are communicated to professionally and that their check-in experience is smooth and that their stay is great, and that leads all the way to feedback. I think that knowing when mundane processes can be scaled by automation rather than expanding a team of agents, and finding the balance of when you need a person to jump on a call or on a chat, like Steve said, to know that there's a human behind there, that your stay is going to be great, that you're dealing with a company that cares about your visit. Finding that balance and using tools that really let you focus on the scale is a huge part of each of the stages we talked to, from the marketing to your stay.
Yeah, I think, Ela, that's an amazing point you've made. It's like a very nuanced thing of how do you find that balance between human touch and automating the parts of the business which are not necessarily mundane, but they're the ones who are which allow you to scale, right? So you're never going to be able to build a successful business without a fantastic human element to it. That's part of the brand you're trying to build. That's sort of woven into, regardless if you have 1 property, 50 properties, or 500 properties. But finding the right balance of tech along the way is what's going to allow you to actually go from 1 to 50 to 500. And I think that, you know, where we always talk about things as like less tech is more. Like, don't, when the customer or the stay, they see all these devices and they're sort of overwhelmed with it. The best kind of technology is the technology you don't even know is there, you know. And I think that, you know, try and like a PMS, understand that. That's great. Yeah, exactly. It just works. It makes everything smooth. It protects the owner. It also protects the guest, and you can scale those pieces of your business. And it's amazing. It's amazing to watch people do it successfully.
Yeah, I could, Ela, thanks for bringing that up. It's I could say one mistake that I see a lot of property managers do, and this is not related to it's not exclusive to our industry. It's pretty much every industry in the world. When you want to automate something, you need a manual process that works. There's no technology. Let's say there's a bunch of tools for sales teams. Let's say you're selling cars or whatever you're selling, but if you got a dysfunctional sales team, there's no technology in the world that can make it functional. However, if you got a functional sales team, there is technology that can improve that. And the same goes with everything, whether you're renting out vacation homes or producing fast food or maybe providing regulatory environment changes for banks. Everything can be, technology can help, but it can't fix a broken process. Now, the mistake that we see with our customers is that they can have a functional process for 10 properties. 10 properties can mean 20 to 30 check-ins and check-outs a week, and they can automate that using technology. The mistake they're making, though, is when they reach 50 properties and you suddenly got 100 to 150 check-ins or check-outs a week, the same process that the technology is based on is no longer going to work. And they think that it's a technology problem, but it's actually not. It's because those are two different businesses. One is operating 20 checkouts a week, and the other one is operating 100 checkouts a week. If you had no technology, you'd need to change the way you do business. A bit like if you make yourself one hamburger versus you run a McDonald's for 24 hours, those are two entirely different things. The same technology is not going to solve it, and the same process is not going to solve that problem. Another thing that I see happens quite often with property managers is as they grow too fast, they don't have enough time for that personal touch, and it's incredibly important. Just because you have 200 checkouts every week, it doesn't mean that you can't talk to the guests. Just pick up the phone or go and meet them and ask them about their vacation, ask about the restaurants in the area, ask them about the weather, ask them about the family. Did the kids enjoy their stay? Was it nice for a dog? Or did they work remotely? How were the working conditions? Was it too hot in the office? Was it oh, I look a bit hot, don't I?
maybe an important tip that you're kind of sharing here also is not to wait too late to automate. So you're saying that with 5 you can handle it, with 50 you can't, but when you suddenly remember that you're in deep trouble at the 50 mark, not to say that it's late, we're all here to help, but it would be better if you do it in advance. So kind of once you have a good process that works, I think not, and we've all in our different areas have dealt with companies coming and saying, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. I mean, now it's overwhelming. I have 5 people or 15 people doing certain things. So I think automating faster, growing too fast, which is a good problem to have, it'll be nice to be proactive about certain things. So thinking about which processes down the line you've perfected manually, and therefore there's no reason not to automate, go ahead and automate. Whereas the processes where you want to maintain the personal touch, invest to maintain that even when you're at 200 properties. And that's like maybe a point that is valuable for smaller operators to catch earlier on, that larger ones are kind of stuck dealing with after the fact.
All right, let's get to our final point here before we get into the QA. We're running a bit low on time. What about after checkout? What can you do to the guest? I can add maybe my 5 cents here. One thing that travelers do these days, they spend a lot more time researching the properties. And that means going through the reviews, but at the same time, like Kevin said, they have wildly different needs. Some people want to find a place that they can travel to with their pets. Others want to bring their parents, some want to bring their kids. One thing that I see quite often on property reviews is very generic reviews. The place was nice, the location is great, the place was clean. That doesn't really help someone who's looking for a place to work remotely for a month, and they just want to know if the Wi-Fi is good and if the office chairs are comfortable. So what you can do as a property manager, if you can identify a unique group staying for a specific reason, ask them to write a review from that point of view. Instead of saying, as a generic vacation, it was nice staying here, say, as a working remotely for 2 weeks, it was lovely staying here because the Wi-Fi was good and because the air conditioning was great and because I had enough lights and the chair was comfortable. Those are the things that you can do because people will do their own research, and that speaks a lot louder than any description or house rules you put in.
I've never heard somebody say, I'm going to give my 5 cents. I feel like that's stealing time, Marcus. I'll try to give my 2 cents, but in general, I think there's one important thing here, which is I want to make sure that we don't confuse a personal touch with being there in person, right? Because there's nothing scalable about meeting somebody at the property because it means that you have to be in a particular place at a particular time to meet somebody. And so to me, personal touch, like, it can be accomplished through an email. It can be accomplished through a form sort of request for a review. And so specifically on this point here, I would say that it is critical for reviews. And again, I saw it at Verbo sort of play out in the data. The owners and property managers that ask their travelers for a review get reviews. Those that don't. And so ask. It's that simple. Just follow up with the traveler. I know you just checked out. Could you please leave a review? Could you please leave a review about, your ski stay, your sort of golf buddy trap, like whatever the occasion was, right? Maybe make it personal in that way, as Marcus mentions. But the most important thing is ask.
I think if we're talking about scale, then after a guest stay, the best outcome you can have from a good guest is for them to become a repeat guest. And the best outcome you can have from a problematic guest is for them to be properly flagged so that they don't come back and you're not putting your business at risk. So the first part is really a matter of like asking. You could be asking for a review. You can also be asking for their honest review of their stay internally. You could be offering them to book direct next time. You can be offering some incentives. I've seen very original ways of converting guests to repeat guests, and that should be your goal. And then when it comes to if things didn't go as expected, make sure you have a feedback loop. So what wasn't caught on time? Should you have released the check-in instructions or the door code? Is this guest, like, did they lie about their intention? Is the cleaning staff stuck with, a 3-day block now because there was smoke in the unit? So I think that for both good and bad situations, make sure you have that feedback loop internally to say, what kind of guest do we want down the line? If we have 5 properties right now, what do we want at the 50 properties mark? Because you're not going to be able to handle those as well if it's not properly handled and the process is automated. So distinguishing the two is really important as well.
Yeah, if I can just add another 5 cents to a quarter. I think, the ultimate goal here, let's be honest, is to try and get a direct booking next time, right? So if you can have that communication with the guests, as has been said already, where you check in right away, say, hey, how was your stay? Really appreciate, a review, small business, really trying to get on our feet here. Is there anything we could have done to improve your stay? And by the way, for spending a couple minutes of your time, love to offer you the place again, this week, next year, try and get that booking in the calendar right away. And we, again, we try to capture as much guest data as possible because, it's important for the owner operator, because the OTAs actually block out a lot of that guest data. And then to be able to take that and to, feed it in if you're using a CRM or some sort of marketing tool, it's important to just keep that communication line open with the guests, because next time they do look at a vacation, they're going to think of you if you kind of went above and beyond. And I think that that's an important piece to consider as well.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of caution people from, and it's not, there's nothing against direct booking, but there's a time and a place for direct booking. And then there's a time and a place for sort of a booking, that's a first time booking potentially through one of the OTAs. And I'll just give you an example here, which is if I have gone on a golf trip with, 7 of my buddies, and we do it every year, right? But we do it to a different location. And by the way, the majority of travelers that book on Airbnb and on Vrbo, like the families don't repeat to the same home, to the same beach, the same home every single year. Those should obviously be direct bookings. They should be direct bookings before the person even leaves the house. But the majority of the bookings that come from Airbnb, from Vrbo, from Booking.com, they are, different groups, different families, different sort of couples, et cetera, that are traveling to new and different places or want to experience different homes. And I can't tell you, like I took a trip to Scottsdale, and 4 or 5 years ago with friends of mine, and to this day, I get a weekly email from the company saying, "Come back to Scottsdale, book this." And it's like, I'm not coming back, right? Because we do this thing once a year in a different place. And so there's a fine line between knowing who the traveler is and what the use case is, and sort of annoyance. And so just pay attention to it. I think you should get as many direct bookings as you possibly can, but it's
Kevin,
not always.
Sorry to interrupt you there,
easy.
but if you've been receiving these emails five years, I think that's a strong indicator that you didn't hit the unsubscribe button, which to me proves that the marketing campaign was quite successful, because you're even mentioning it here on this webinar.
I didn't mention the name of the company, but I don't unsubscribe because I never want anybody to unsubscribe from me. So I feel like it's a pay it forward thing, Marcus.
It's a double-edged sword.
That's automation abuse, to be fair, because it's not a person that is really, really adamant and says Kevin was the best. Let's get him back. So that really is automation abuse, and maybe like good notes to try and avoid doing that. But as you build your brand, that's something you can aim to do without bugging Kevin's in such a.
Yep, that's right.
So now you've learned the things that bug me are automation abuse and my mother after a bad booking. So.
Exactly. No, I think it comes down to the 80-20 rule again. Maybe your golf trip wasn't part of that 80% that would actually appreciate a rebooking. It's however, for property managers, very important to store this data. At Hostaway, we have a guest book that allows you to store all the marketing information, and for guests to, like Kevin, to opt out of the communication if they want.
And by the way, certainly if you're a large property manager and you have homes, throughout the U.S. or around the world, the likelihood of a traveler, going to a different place is very high. And so, yes, right, like CRM is critical.
Yeah.
But again, it's just not always the right answer.
All right. Well, I think we made it through the agenda here, and we got only a couple of questions. I can see that both of them are related to Hostaway's marketplace partners. So you can, if you have any questions for the panel here, please put them in the Q&A. If you have questions about a specific company on this webinar, please reach out to them directly. And if you have questions about companies on the Hostaway marketplace, you can use support@hostaway.com. Of course, if you're not a customer of Hostaway, I recommend going to hostaway.com and signing up. Talk to our staff. I'm sure they can help you with everything that you need. I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to personally thank everyone for joining. And Ela, Kevin, Steve, any final wishes or regards for the rest of the summer season here?
I would just say thanks to everybody for tuning in and listening, and I hope to see everybody out there traveling at some point soon. Feels like the world's coming back, so get out there and travel. Sure. Enjoy the world.
Best of luck to everyone out there. Hope you have a cracking summer season, and if you got any questions, get in touch with any of us. I think we all can all help you guys scale your businesses and make it a huge success. So best of luck.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone. And just a disclaimer here to Kevin's point about traveling. Yes, please do travel, but try to stay away from the airport because it's pretty rough out there for a lot of people around the world these days. But thanks, everyone, for joining in. And yeah, this webinar will be available on YouTube. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.